welcome back to Dungeon Masterpiece Theater. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our topic today, how to run therapy sessions for when your player characters die and need help going through their grief. Thank you for watching, and now, this show. Bother.
There's a place so very far. We can get there as long as it's by stolen car. Smash your face and go shoot up.
This is the Heavy Metal RPG Podcast with your host, BanjoDestructo.
Welcome to the Heavy Metal RPG Podcast, the show where we talk about Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game and other games and how they are just fun, metal, bonkers, and awesome. This is episode 0, where we're going to do an introduction to DCC RPG. We're going to talk about the level 0 funnels, and we're going to start off with some icebreakers and other stuff. So, if you want to send any emails, comments, questions, recorded files, send them to heavymetaladventures@protonmail.com. Alrighty. Now for the icebreaker. Today's icebreaker question is, if you had a magical power to squirt any kind of liquid from one of your hands from each of the 5 fingers from your hands. So, it's magic. You're not being affected by it. Temperature can be anything. What 5 liquids would they be? Alrighty, so this is kind of a tricky question, right? Obviously, you want some utility. You don't want it all to just be food. So, for the purely theoretical utility of it all, I would want to squirt out liquid neutronium from one of my fingers. So that's 1. From another one, I would want to do liquid hydrogen. That's 2. From my 3rd finger, I think it'd be nice to do water. So that's 3. Alrighty. So then, what else do you have? You've got, I think vodka would be a nice one to do for finger number 4. And for finger number 5, I think I might want to do liquid stevia, which is kind of a weird one. But, these days, I've been on a stevia kick, using that as a sweetener instead of sugar. And I think that'd be nice just to be able to squirt out a little bit of stevia to sweeten things in a liquid form. So yeah, those are my 5 things. If you have 5 liquids that you would want to squirt out of each of the 5 fingers on one hand, magical power, it can be hot, it can be cold, you won't be affected by the temperature, you won't be affected by the chemical composition when you squirt it out. Send your email to heavymetaladventures@protonmail.com and let me know what 5 liquids you would want to squirt out of your fingers. Alrighty. On to the main subject. What is Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game? Well, DCC RPG is a game published by Goodman Games. They wrote the game as a response to the low sales that 4th edition had for the modules that they were making. Goodman Games started off doing modules for 3rd edition. Maybe they did some for editions of Dungeons & Dragons before that, but 4th edition was such a low blow and unpopular with their fan base that Goodman Games decided to make their own game. So they took 3rd edition and they changed some things up to make Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game. So in the game, you've got what's called a dice chain. So sometimes in 3rd edition you might have lots of bonuses and penalties, pluses and minuses to the rolls that you do. Goodman Games came up with an idea of a dice chain where maybe instead of getting a +2 to a roll, like D6 + 2, you might just bump it up on the dice chain so it becomes a D7. Or, instead of getting a +4 on an attack roll, like a D20 +4, you would roll a D24. So, in the book, they've got this dice chain listed out. It goes all the way between D3 to D30. So that's one thing that makes DCC RPG different than Dungeons & Dragons. One of the other things is that they've taken the 4 core classes, Warrior, Thief, Wizard, and Cleric, and those are humans only. And then they've reintroduced an old idea from original D&D where elves, dwarfs, and halflings, those are classes instead of just being a race that you can choose and then throw a different class on top of it. And this is kind of based on the idea that the adventuring world that you're in is a human-centric world. Humans are the main adventurers. They're the ones who are perceived as having differences in their abilities. And, all of these strange, unfamiliar races that sometimes come into the world of humans, if they do adventuring, they all seem to do the same stuff, which is why elf is a class, instead of elves being wizards, warriors, and who knows what else. Another idea of Dungeon Crawl Classics is that monsters should be strange and unique. The goblins that are raiding your town are called goblins by the villagers because that's just what's plaguing them. The goblins raiding your town are different than the goblins raiding towns on the other side of the mountains. The people call them goblins, but they can be different, right? So if you were a scientist today, you might classify them as different monsters, but because the whole world revolving around these villagers being attacked doesn't include stuff over the mountain, it doesn't include stuff from other kingdoms, it doesn't include stuff from all over the world, and because these monsters don't tell them, hey, we're not goblins, we are Sverfneblins or whatever else, right? These monsters aren't telling the people, hey, don't call us goblins. The only thing that's important is, these villagers, they're calling them goblins, right? So the idea is that there isn't a monster manual of different monsters to choose from. There's a list of some monsters in the book, but they really encourage you to try and make all the monsters unique and different, even if they might have the same name. And, they really hammered this home. There's a random dragon generator in the book, and I think it's really cool. It's very inspirational with all the different powers that you can give to the dragon, or that you can randomly choose from the dragon. Like, one of my favorites is Rust Touch, where, any metal that touches the dragon scales rusts instantly into a powder oxidized metal. So if you're attacking the dragon with regular weapons, they're gonna get turned into rust. If the dragon bumps into your armor and your armor's metal, it's gonna get turned into dust. I think that's really cool. And And some of the other things different between 3rd edition and Dungeon Crawl Classics is they got rid of the skill ranks and they got rid of feats. They also got rid of increasing your stats every 4 levels. In addition to that, you have a maximum level of 10 and instead of 20. But really, because of all the special powers that the classes get, it sometimes feels like, like a level 1 warrior in Dungeon Crawl Classics is sometimes even more powerful than like a level 2 fighter in 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. So, fewer levels, but probably more drastic power scaling. No feats to worry about, just the powers that your class gives you. If you want to add unusual powers to your character, there's a whole section in the book based around questing for it, or, going on quests to get unusual things, unusual items, unusual powers, training unusual abilities, things like that. Anything that you want to do, the judge is encouraged to let players try to get it just by going on a quest to get it. And the other big thing that people talk about with Dungeon Crawl Classics is the level 0 funnel. And what the game is kind of based around is the idea that characters in the world are all level 0 unless they are special. So if you want to run a level 0 funnel, it's like an adventure for regular people in this world where, maybe they hear about rumors of treasure, so they go off to find treasure. Maybe there's a prophecy in the town, and they go off to fulfill the prophecy. Maybe they get kidnapped and have to break out and get back home. Maybe they're sucked through a portal by strange cosmic forces and they have to survive. So, they're taking these regular level 0 people and throwing them into strange and weird adventures that adventurers might go on to. And each person you have at the table, they recommend 4 level 0 characters for each person. Maybe you want to do 6. It depends on the adventure. And, you go through this adventure and you track the experience points as you go through. And as soon as you get 10 experience points, something in the brain clicks into place, or something snaps. This heavy metal moment where, these heroes, they're getting kicked around, they're being downtrodden, they're powerless. Something snaps in their brain. The heavy metal music starts ripping through the air. All these power chords are playing, and they gain the powers of becoming level 1 adventurers. So if you're human, you get to pick your class. If your characters are dwarves, elves, or whatever, they become a level 1 elf, they become a level 1 dwarf, right? So they gain all their powers, and then they start kicking ass. The power starts being handed to them. They get to start having their own way with it. And so that's really one of the fun things about the level 0 funnel, right? And then, if they survive, you've already got some characters left that you can keep going on more adventures with. Lots of people I see ask, what do you do when you have more than one character who survives a level 0 funnel? Well, just keep each character that survives, right? You can choose to have more than one character be under your control. That's probably one of the more modern mindsets of today, is that you can only have one character at a time, when Dungeon Crawl Classics is trying to embrace more old school ideas where You might have 2 characters you run at once. You might have 3 characters you run at once. You might have 4. You might have 1 character who has hired 2 henchmen and also has like a torchbearer and like a porter and a whole bunch of other stuff to support a whole bunch of other characters that they've hired to support them on their adventures, right? And that's one of the things about modern campaigns that kind of disappoints me. I feel like you feel a little disconnected and not really part of the world by only having control of 1 character. And, there's also this idea that, if you start at level 1, you have an expectation that you're gonna keep that character all the way to level 20. The old school idea is you start with your character and you don't know how long they're gonna survive. You try to keep them alive as long as possible. And you hire, death is around every corner, and you hire other characters to help keep your character to survive. That's one of the big things that spending treasure on was supposed to be. Treasure is not supposed to be something where you save up and you go to the magic item store and you upgrade your +2 sword to a +3 sword and you get a better shield and you get this magical amulet, right? Magical items might have been fairly common, but they could also be destroyed or disenchanted. But there wasn't some bazaar of magical trinkets that are just floating around and everybody gets a thousands of gold to spend on magic items, and then you spend it on people in the world who have their own motivations and who can help you, right? That's a bit of a tangent, but that's one of the things about Dungeon Crawl Classics that can be so fun, is trying to make a campaign that is beyond just the character that you're doing adventures with. The judge runs all the NPCs and things like that, but as a player, you can have more agency in the world than just the characters you control. If your judge allows it, they could let you run 1 NPC faction. Like, maybe you're doing a hex crawl campaign, and your judge gives you command of a tribe of goblins, and so you get to decide, where's the goblin lair? Where do the goblins go when they go raiding? How often do they go raiding? What do they do with the stuff that they get when they go raiding? Like, do they use it as material? Like, do they try and do trading with pirates and other people who don't care, who they trade with? That they'll trade with anybody. Like, maybe they trade with the evil necromancer who has some kingdom that they control. World building can be fun within a constrained set of rules that everybody plays by. Modern story games try to get other people to do world building, but they do that by throwing rules out the window, usually, and just allowing anything to happen. And when, the old saying goes, keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. Rules are not there to limit people in what they can do. They are there to put realistic constraints on what can happen in the world, and then allow people to use their creativity within those limits to build a world together. Maybe you have more fun controlling the goblins than running adventures as a person, but, you could build the goblins up to be so interesting that it makes for, like, a fun dungeon crawl later on when your character raids the goblins. Or, maybe you make the goblins go to war against the trolls. Who knows, right? That's how interesting things happen. It takes burden off the judge, right? The judge really should be there to make sure dice rolls that happen follow the rules, and that the outcomes that happen from the dice are what actually happens, and they are reflected in the world. But, really, a fun campaign should be, if you're starting off at level 0 from a town of, poor people, some of them become adventurers, maybe they want to get gold and stuff to help their town, right? Motivation is one of the things that emerges from circumstances of the world and the campaign that you're running. It shouldn't be something that you pick from a list of things in a background that you spend an hour working on before you even start playing. And so these level 0 characters in Dungeon Crawl Classics, what they've got, you can roll on a table of professions. That'll determine what their lot in life is. And, the rulebook encourages you to roll 3d6 for stats. Roll them in order. You might get low, you might get high. You don't get to pick your stats. It's a little bit more like real life, where you don't get to pick the limits of your ability. Those are partly genetic and partly nutritional, right? You don't get to pick how tall you are. You don't get to pick how smart you are. So that's kind of how the stats work in Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's more of the idea that you take what you're given and you make the best of it. And I really like that. Alrighty, so we talked about level 0 characters, the level 0 funnel. We talked a little bit about campaigns. One of the things that makes Dungeon Crawl Classics different from Dungeons & Dragons is the spellcasting. Instead of just picking a spell and choosing to cast it, and then the effect being the same every time, what you do is you roll dice and you consult a table. Each spell has its own spell table. You add your caster level, you add your stat bonus, maybe you have some other bonuses that apply to it, and you consult the table to see what the final result of the spellcasting is. You can have a level 1 spellcaster cast Magic Missile and have it be dinky, or you could roll really high and have it nuke like all the monsters that you're fighting off in one turn. And it's also different from Dungeons & Dragons in that there are no spell casts per day that you have. Like in Dungeons & Dragons, you might memorize 3 level 1 spells, and you can only cast each of those spells once per day, so you would be limited, right? If you had 3 spells per day, you could cast 3 spells per day, and that's it. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, you can keep casting spells all day long if you want, but if you roll low and the spell fails, that's when you forget the spell and cannot cast it anymore for that day. So you could cast Magic Missile and have it fail the first time and be done with it for the day. You could cast Magic Missile 20 times in one day and have it work each time, and as long as it keeps working, you can keep throwing out Magic Missiles. That's how it works for wizards. How it works for clerics is, you get disapproval when your spell fails, and you can keep casting and casting no matter how high your disapproval is, but bad things are going to happen to you if you roll low enough to trigger your disapproval. And we'll talk about that more when we talk about clerics. We'll talk about the spell casting with wizards more when we talk about those. But spell casting is based on luck and tables instead of just having the same effect work every single time. One thing that also exists, in addition to getting the profession of your characters, the profession determines the starting equipment that you have, and you might also get a little bit of extra copper too to go with it. So if you're a farmer, you can have a chicken or a goat. If you're a cheesemaker, you start with some cheese. Really random stuff that you have with you in these weird dungeons. And it encourages you to really use your creativity to use these items that you would probably never choose to take as a regular adventurer, and use them to get through this nasty, horrible dungeon. Alrighty, well, I think I've talked enough about this. Let me know if you think I should do more editing. I'm thinking about whether I should just rant and then post it as is, or do a little editing and then throw it together and put it up, but I don't know. This is about the third or fourth test episode I've recorded. Like I said, send your emails to heavymetaladventures@protonmail.com. I've got some PDFs up on DriveThru RPG. I'm working on more, but I never know when I'll get them out. It's kind of a hit and miss thing with work and everything else. Alrighty, keep on gaming, and let's head on out to the Metal Land, where everyone rolls dice.
Filthy hair and dirty faces, iron face and swords and maces. 80s hairbands are still hated. No false metal tolerated. Heavy metal is the law. Witness beats a broken saw. Everything is loud.
It's over. Turn yourself in.
I swear, I ain't a murder hobo. I didn't kill that shopkeeper. Please, let me go.
I don't care. Turn yourself in or roll initiative.